Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am super excited to dive into this one with you. We're going to be unpacking a really fascinating text that looks at a pretty perilous tightrope we humans walk: the relationship between financial dependence and personal integrity, specifically in the realm of politics. It's this incredibly profound look at human behavior. Like, what actually happens when our literal livelihoods are tied to the exact same people we're supposed to be holding accountable? Let's just jump right in. So I want to kick things off by posing a pretty provocative question straight from our source material. What is the silent killer in politics? Take a second to think about that. I mean, we usually picture political destruction in super loud terms, right? Scandals, massive protests, dramatic backstabbing. But the text we're looking at suggests the real danger is actually way more quiet and way more insidious. The source text gives us this absolute gut punch of an answer. It doesn't come with bullets. It comes with contracts and stipends. The argument here is that the single most dangerous threat to political integrity isn't physical violence, and it isn't overt threats. It's actually just the slow, creeping comfort of a steady paycheck. Okay, let's dive into this. To unpack all of this, we're going to use a 5-part diagnostic framework. We'll cover the silent political killer, the symptoms of a bought conscience, the antidote for political aides, a warning to leaders, and finally, principles over the stomach. Starting off with Section 1, the silent political killer, when survival depends on one table. The author introduces this concept that is just so vivid and honestly pretty alarming. They call it putting your conscience on annual leave. They define this as the state where your mouth changes and your eyes close, simply because your rent, your fuel, your kids' school fees, and your daily food depend entirely on one politician's table. The text argues that when someone is 100% financially dependent on a political figure, their moral compass basically just shuts down. They go completely blind to their benefactor's faults because, well, their literal survival is tethered to that person's success. Telling the truth suddenly becomes enemy number one. Which brings us to Section 2, symptoms of a bought conscience and the degradation of morals. You know, it's pretty wild to contrast what people say out loud with what they're actually feeling internally. When an aide defends a clearly botched project with some tired cliche like, well, Rome wasn't built in a day, or they start blaming enemies of progress, the underlying reality is usually way simpler and way more desperate. The reality is, I need next month's paycheck. They end up defending the completely indefensible, not because they actually believe in the policy, but because the truth dies the minute the stomach takes over. And that leads directly to a second symptom: going on the attack against anyone who dares to speak the truth. Let's say a young kid points out that a new road project is totally substandard. A dependent aide will instantly label him an enemy of progress. Or a woman very reasonably asks, "Hey, where's the money for this?" And she's swiftly branded an ingrate. The psychological twist here is that these aides don't even genuinely hate the critics. They're attacking out of pure fear. If the leader falls, the aide's own table breaks. So they fight the truth tooth and nail just to make sure their bills get paid. You can see how this turns into a really dangerous, slippery slope of moral compromise. It doesn't all happen at once. Today, it starts passively. You just bite your tongue when you see something wrong. Tomorrow, it escalates, right? You tell a little white lie to cover up a mistake. By next month, you're being ordered to actively insult a critic. An aide slowly loses their voice and, honestly, their identity, until they wake up one day as a full-time defender of wrongs. The bill always comes due, and the currency they're using to pay it is their conscience. So how do we fix this? Section 3, the antidote for political aides: reclaiming your voice. How do you actually prevent this total loss of self? Well, what I found incredibly practical here is that the author literally gives us a math equation for integrity. The rule is this: make sure 80% of your income comes from non-political sources. That could be a trade, a normal 9-to-5, a small business. Meanwhile, you strictly cap your political income at 20%. The logic makes so much sense, right? When politics is just a tiny fraction of your income, you can actually afford to look your boss in the eye and say, "No, this is wrong," without the paralyzing fear of absolute financial ruin. The text lays it out plain and simple. Financial independence equals voice independence. Building on that 80-20 math, the text gives us 4 clear action items. Let your skills pay most of your bills. Know exactly what you will not do for money. Serve based on principles, not your stomach. And remember that only character builds the future. I want you to really zero in on that second point for a second. What are your personal career red lines? Is it refusing to lie? Refusing to tear someone else down? Write those boundaries down before the money is ever on the table. By doing that, your past self can literally step in to save your future self.
Now, what about the folks in charge? Section 4, a warning to leaders, the danger of yes men.
The source offers this incredibly powerful, kind of chilling warning to those in power. A leader who kills truth will one day be killed by lies. The massive takeaway here is that politicians who surround themselves only with financially dependent yes men are effectively paying people out of their own pockets to kill the truth. Think about it. If everyone in the room relies on the leader for 100% of their livelihood, absolutely no one is going to have the courage to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, the ship is sinking. The truth just gets buried. But eventually, reality always catches up.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, Principles over the Stomach, Politics as Service.
We've arrived at the core thesis of the whole text, which is that politics should be an act of public service, not some transactional business. And the author leaves us with this insanely vivid metaphor. Eat from the table, but don't sell your soul with the plate. Because look, the bank alerts will eventually stop. The contracts will dry up. Governments will inevitably change hands. But the kind of person you became while all that money was flowing, your character, that stays with you for the rest of your life.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on as we wrap up this explainer. Where do you draw the line between financial security and personal integrity? The source text uses politics as its lens, sure, but let's be real, this is a deeply human challenge. It applies to corporate offices, the tech startup world, everyday life. I really challenge you to reflect on how these principles apply to your own career. What are your absolute non-negotiable boundaries? Keep that question rolling around in your head as you navigate your own path. Thank you so much for hanging out and unpacking these ideas with me. And as always, keep learning and keep asking those tough questions.